All right, so I'm going to get started with just some basic information, just touch base with you guys. I'm going to record this, so it's on the, I'll post it this later today. And as I put up here, here's a reminder, Module 2 ends Saturday, September 26th. So this Saturday, Module 2 ends. You got make sure everything's uploaded by 11:59 p.m. on the 26th. Then Module 2 test begins at midnight, so a minute later if you wanted to make sure you got everything in and you can start the test. And the test is making it trying to make it a little bit easier this time. So here is the study guide for the test. It's I know it looks short, but it's a 20-question multiple choice questions. Each question is worth 5 points for a total of 100 points. It's a mixture of multiple choice, matching, and true false. And so the information is taken from the lectures we've had in class in RTI and UDL, and from the Sousa book, and from the Von Boss and Shum book. So those are the two main textbooks we're using in class, right? And then the additional readings and assignments. So they're 5 points each for a total of 100 points. Rather than it being a all essay like the last one, this one will be graded immediately. So you'll be able to upload that and see your grade immediately. So that'll be easier. I think we're going to do that all the way through from now on, just to make it easier on everybody and get grades quicker for everybody. Okay, so today we're going to talk about determining scientific or evidence-based practice for instruction on students with difficulties, not only disabilities, but with just having difficulties in the classroom setting. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to give you some tools that will help you identify evidence-based practices. And before we get started, let's talk about why is this an important concept, evidence-based practices. This is right out of IDEA, and it talks about the IEP statement and all this other stuff like that. But if we go to the federal law on education in general, it was the ESEA, Elementary Secondary Education Act. It was passed in 1965, and it's been reauthorized along the way. It's changed its name from No Child Left Behind, from the ESEA to No Child Left Behind. It's now the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. It was last reauthorized in the Obama administration, and they changed it to that. In that language in the law, it talks about that all teachers must use scientifically based intervention and scientifically based instruction. So what does that mean to you? When I say that something is scientifically based, what is it supported by? Evidence. So you must have a independent research doing a study to see if it's an appropriate instructional strategy. Because what happens is, in education in general, we tend to throw money at programs that seem to be emotionally okay. You know, let's take a couple that, one that I mentioned last time was, a couple times ago during UDL, was learning styles. You guys still get taught about learning styles, do you not? However, I will send to you guys an article that talks about the lack of evidence for this mythology that we consistently put into our instruction and hang our hats on. There is no documented research to support learning styles. Another one is that we see a lot in reading difficulties. It's called Erlen disorder or scotopic sensitivity. And you see people with different colored glasses, like orange and yellow and different stuff like that. They went through this screening and said that this will help you read better and stay focused. Well, that's not validated by any research. In fact, there's no supporting research for that. So that's an interesting thing. It could be a placebo, you know, but it has no research to support it. Everybody's up in arms about President Trump saying, okay, let's get rid of all these trainings that's based on critical race theory. And critical race theory is another one of those theories that have no supporting evidence. So if you're trying to make a huge change for students, for individuals, are you going to base your program on something that is just a house of cards that is fake because there's no research to support it? Now, anecdotally, you might say, yeah, there's stuff to support it, but that's not research. That is story. So ever so often, you might come across that. Now, learning styles, let's go back to that one. Do you guys have a preference on how you learn?
I like hands-on.
Do you like to manipulate things?
Yeah, I like hands-on, getting to know how to do it.
Right. We would say, Zach, that you're a tactile kinesthetic learner. Okay? And how many of you folks like to listen to books on tape? I love them. I used to hate it. I was very visually oriented, and men tend to be more visually oriented than women. But I was very visually oriented. So what I had to start doing was creating the vision, the picture in my head as I listened to the story, which then carried over to when I read, I create the picture in my head and I make a movie in my head. So whenever my favorite books in the world are the Tolkien series of books, I started reading those in 4th grade and every year ever since, you know. So I had this very specific vision of Gandalf, and I had a very specific vision of Smaug, and Bilbo, and Samwise, and all these. And whenever they created these movies, I said, well, that's almost my picture, you know, but it wasn't exactly. So I loved the movies, but I didn't love the movies at the same time because it wasn't who I saw. And my favorite character is Treebeard, and they didn't do a very good job. So, you know, you think about those things. But in fact, the research shows that instead of a single learning process, a teaching process, you need to hit all modalities: visual, tactile, kinesthetic, emotional, auditory, olfactory. You need to fit all those in your teaching style, because the more modalities you hit, the better the students learn. So that's the research. So if that's the research, then learning style saying one single modality is how you teach, doesn't work. See what I'm saying? So the research is real powerful, but we've spent money hand over fist on this stuff, and it's just crazy. I bet you guys, when you guys were in elementary and middle school, you guys did accelerated reading, correct? There was a huge push. Actually started before you guys, when my kids were in school. They spent a lot of money, and you know what the interesting thing is? Once they did the research, the intent of accelerated readers to get the kids to read independently more. That was the purpose. If you practice reading, you read more, then you are a better reader. That's kind of a proven fact. It's perfect practice makes perfect. And so you read more, you read perfectly, you are a better reader. However, the research showed the opposite. Because kids were inundated by accelerated reader, it actually caused people to read less than more. So the research is counter to, and we can go online, I can show you the data for that. But that's an interesting thing, how much money we spent on accelerated reader, right? And so that was and I read 1 million words, and I read this, and I read, all that stuff. That's cool stuff. That's positive reinforcement, but it didn't do what they intended it to do. So we need to know the science behind the instructional strategies that we're going to teach in school. Now, we do know, very supported by research, is the big 5 for reading. You know, the phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and prosody, right? Those are the 5 big areas of reading. And to do a successful reading program, you have to have the 5 big areas of reading in football. That's what the science says. Math is developing that same kind of process, so we're going to see that pretty soon. So that's why this is interesting. Not only does the language and idea talk about evidence-based practices, but the general education laws talk about evidence-based practices also. So that's very important stuff. We need to know why we're doing what we're doing, and it's got science to support it. So that's important to look at. All right. So this is the access to the general education cycle. And remember, with IDEA, for students with disabilities, it's the same curriculum as the general education students. The curriculum standards are exactly the same. We don't have a separate curriculum for students with special needs, right? It's the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. That's what we do. We focus on the TEKS. So students with difficulties in learning must have access to the general education curriculum. If they don't have access to the curriculum, then they're not going to learn it. So you have to have access to the curriculum. Then the second, this is this cycle. They must be involved in the general education curriculum. That means learning it, actively engaged in learning it. Okay? And then you measure progress. Are they making progress? And how does that fit with RTI? Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Does that fit right into the whole RTI process? Because Tier 1 is what? It's hard to forget. Universal. And universal means what? Everyone that walks through the door. And then if they don't make progress here, then Tier 2 is what? Targeted. It's a smaller groups. It's more intensive. And then Tier 3 is individualized. But we're measuring progress in the general education curriculum the whole time, right? And so then if we get here and they're still not making progress, we refer for a special education evaluation, but that's still this cycle, access to, involvement in, and progress in. You see what I'm saying? So it's always there. So that's the important thing. And this is supplemental. We intensified, we moved forward. Remember, the first tier is all about what you're doing in the general education classroom. You guys do not have to have an RTI plan to do tier 1. It's differentiated instruction. You can write, I should have a pen here. We're going to write across this, that you can do this at any time. It is differentiated. I can't spell it. Thank God for word check. Differentiated instruction, which again is research-based. Finding what the student needs and giving that to them is a universal design kind of thing. It's doing that right there. It's differentiated instruction. So those are the important elements of that. So remember that. And you know, as we problem solve, we're going to, in your test, that might be something of a question there. So, okay. So we're not going to do a chalk talk activity. This was a presentation I did. And chalk talk is that we walk around and we write things on poster boards. But I want you guys to talk with your table mates or people close to you. What do you think that might look like? Access in, involvement in, and progress in look like? What might that look like? And then, how will I ensure that I'm giving access in, involvement in, and progress in to my students? How am I going to ensure that? Remember, ensure means you must make it happen. So talk to your table mates for a moment. And you guys, talk amongst yourself. No, I'm just joking. Think about it. This is a big deal for me.
That's what I was talking about. It's kind of hard to ensure the progress.
Right, but we can ensure that they have the opportunity for progress. And so then if you show that, you always have to think that the student has the right to fail. All right? You can't make them all, it's going to lead the horse to water, but they have the right to fail. Even students with special needs have the right to fail, choose not to. But we have to do everything up to try. That's what we're trying to show. Let's 30 seconds, close up our conversations, and we'll share out what we were thinking. Seconds. All right, great. So what would you guys, let's share, what were some of your conversations? This is interesting stuff.
We were discussing how it's easier to ensure access and involvement than it is to ensure progress. It's more difficult to ensure progress.
Right, and progress is a hard thing in all students. And even students with disabilities, we were talking about this over here, you know, you have the right to be successful and you have the right to fail, right? Every student has the right to do either. And even students with disabilities, we can do everything in the world, but if they choose not to engage, they're not going to learn. And so everyone still has the right to fail. You know, in my class, if you don't turn in your work, you have the right to not turn in your work, but you're going to get a 0. I'll do everything in my power to get you there, but you still don't. If you don't turn in the work, I can't grade it. It's important. So that's it. But we can ensure access and involvement, which then should normally lead to progressing in the curriculum, correct? So if we do the first two, then it's up to the student about progress. But we also need to know how they encode information. This is from Sousa. He talks about how you encode information into your brain so you can go into your brain and retrieve that information to demonstrate that you know that information. So encoding and retrieval are the two elements that's important. So how we get them to access and be involved in is how they can start encoding information in their brain. So that's us, that's on us. How they retrieve it is a little on us, but it's more on them. So that's important. We need to teach them those skills on how to retrieve information succinctly and efficiently. Not only learning information, but behavior and social skills and all these other things. They're still learned behaviors. All right, good job. So why do we need evidence-based practices? This is from the National Longitudinal Transition Study, the second one. The data is about 5 years out now, but I want you to look at this. This right here relates to this right here. This right here relates to this. This is all children, all students. So 11% of all students at taking the state test, and this is the data the state sent into the federal government, only 11% of all students are above, at, or at least one grade level behind the expected curriculum. Only 11%. Is that scary? That's a little scary. Now let's look down here. This 23% is 1 to 2.9 grade levels behind the screen. But look at this. 3 to 5 grade levels behind. Percentage, 45%. Almost half. That's bizarre, isn't it? And then we've got 21% that are more than 5 grade levels behind. What about math? What do you think math's going to look like? Is it going to be worse than this? Similar? Better? Here's math. And it's the same breakdown. I don't know what happened to that. So this is above to 1 grade level behind, 2 to 5 or whatever it was, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, more than 5. So talking to tables again about, is that scary or what? And how do you think we're gonna fix this problem? I'd like to see what the current stats are, but we don't have that data yet. We will. Okay, 10 seconds and we'll share. All right, so let's share. And that kind of scary stuff. And you know, I think that this pandemic, we're going to see a lot more students a lot further behind than we have ever seen. And that's just not in our country, that's worldwide. So that's an interesting thing. So we've got to figure out how to get them engaged better in the curriculum virtually. And I really am not sure how we're going to do that right now, because even though our population of students that are currently in school are technology natives, like I'm a technology immigrant, because I'm 62. We didn't have this technology. And in fact, my first college experience, they had this whole building was like the computer, we were in the computer room, you know, because it was big, huge monster things, and all the computer guys walked around with punch cards. And it was really just to do addition and subtraction and that kind of thing. It's interesting. But our computers now, we've got more power in this than we've ever thought. So you guys are computer technology natives. And so maybe you can kind of start thinking as you become teachers how this is going to be, because how we teach has changed. It's changed radically in this era. So it's interesting. And again, that's why that whole learning styles thing is right out the window, because how do you get kids to do tactile kinesthetic if they're tactile kinesthetic? Okay, so why don't you guys talk at your tables about that? Sorry, I didn't mean to drone on. Interesting stuff.
We talked about how we think the bar is set too high.
Is the bar set too high? I mean, we say all the time that the United States is behind some of these other nations, but you know, that's like carbon dating. You know, we find, we say that fossil is 1 million years old, but they don't take into consideration extraneous elements like the flood that caused massive pressure that, which is interesting. And it's based upon an erroneous assumption. So you have to make sure your assumption is correct. But I agree. You know, we are behind our curriculum. We need to get them up. What else?
We had a conversation about standardized testing. Actually, so kids who don't understand the information, some will get farther and farther behind.
Right.
And teachers aren't trying to actually teach them, right? They're just trying to get that information to students, not really making them learn it.
So here's the question. Is the standardized test an authentic assessment? So think about this. If you're at, I'll give you an example. If I asked you guys to tell me the names of the Great Lakes, can you do it? Anybody can? Now, if I gave you this mnemonic device, can we name the Great Lakes? I'll get you started here on. Michigan.
Erie,
Superior. Okay. This right here, this mnemonic device, is a strategy to access information in your brain that's already there. Your learning is there. How we access that learning is something else. So if we use a mnemonic device, that makes it easier for us to attach the learning to that piece, correct? A fill in the blank or multiple choice, which one is more difficult? Sorry? Fill in the blank? Why?
In multiple choice, you get 4 choices, it narrows it down to 4. So
Right.
one of those is got to be right. Instead of one.
But then you have to problem solve to figure out which one's right. And if you have a psychologist for a teacher, then they screwed all up. But really, in reality, it's asking the exact same thing for that information. One is that you're going to have to find the information, remember how to spell it, remember how to make those marks that make meaning, and put it onto the paper. On multiple choice, you have to rule out certain things to say that's not it, that's more it, but that's not it completely, that's it completely, right? It's the same process, and they're not any easier. It's just easier to access the information when you have hints. So that's important. So just like this, I asked you to access the information, but I gave you a hint, a mnemonic device, and that helps. So the testing that we're doing are not authentic assessments. And if we really wanted to see true where students are at, what level they're at, then we need to create authentic assessments like portfolio assessment, project-based learning. Those kind of things are authentic. They're not authentic to when in your life, other than being a teacher to take a certification exam, are you going to do a fill in the bubble test in your job? You know, rarely. But if you're given a job to say, okay, here's this case of this student, what are you going to do to help that student learn? And then you give that information. Is that more authentic than Billy could not learn the A sound? Is that a phonics problem? You see what I'm saying? So the testing that we're doing is not authentic. And so that could be a part of the reason we're seeing poor scores. Also, in Texas and most other states, our curriculum is a mile wide and an inch deep. And so you've got so many things that you've got to put into it. But in the Asian countries, specifically Japan, where they knock the socks off of stuff, it's an inch wide and a mile deep. And the reason that they do better is that they can get in, they learn how to problem solve things, and they can add to the curriculum and to the information that way. It's much better. So we've got to rethink how we do teaching, and so we get students more advanced in the curriculum. That's what we need to do with kids with disabilities, is that find those areas that they are behind and fill in the gaps moving forward. So it's a problem-solving model, so it works. So this is interesting stuff. Now here's some things I'm going to throw out to you guys. What we do know that students with behavior difficulties in school are the least ready to receive academic instruction. We know that. When they graduate, in fact, most students with behavior difficulties, only about 50 to 70% graduate from high school. Most of those end up in prison. Then either they're unemployed or they're underemployed because their behavior is getting in the way of their working. And so, see that last bullet says, school completion rates for students with emotional behavior disorders is 56%. That is lower than any other subset except for students with very significant severe intellectual disabilities. That's terrible. And what we do know about kids with emotional and behavior disorders is that normally it's because they're not being instructed appropriately in the curriculum. Think about this. You have Johnny over here that can't read well, and the teacher is asking him to read out loud in the class. And so the teacher asks him to do that. It's his turn. He jumps up, throws a book at the teacher, screams curse word, and runs out of the room. Well, that's a behavior disorder, correct? But it's because it's based on his inability to read. He just didn't know any other way to escape it. So that's what we're seeing with these kids, is that there's a mismatch in their ability to learn and how they're being taught. So that's an important thing to think of. So again, we've talked about evidence-based instruction. The research says winning a matter define evidence-based instruction as the integration of professional wisdom with the best available empirical evidence in making decisions for students. So that's where it comes into using science and the art of teaching to teach. So you guys are artists and scientists. Isn't that cool? So it is an art of teaching, knowing how to put the stuff up there so kids learn, and but using evidence-based instruction to get there. So it's the integration of the two. It's really kind of fun stuff. So your responsibility is in the process is to learn strategies that can affect most kids, and then learn and learn and learn and keep learning and develop your professional skills as time goes on. So it benefits the students. So for just a minute, I want you to talk to your table mates and talk about what does educational benefit, how are you going to determine educational benefit for students? What do you think?
Does.
Okay, so, interesting, isn't it, that we need to be thinking about educational freedom all the time. And so, did you guys, anything interesting jump out in your conversations?
We're talking about educational benefits that kind of benefit the real world per se. We're talking about whenever they get into like high school and stuff like that, they kind of want to know where when we go to college or whatever, and that's why they have a lot more specialized classes because it'll benefit them more to go to the specialized classes. I say they want to be a biologist, they go to biology classes. So.
They need those foundations. What you do in elementary is vitally important what happens in secondary and then on to college and on. But the main thing is learning how to learn. That's why undergrad coursework being face-to-face is so important, because the process of learning how to learn is refining that process. And when you move on to graduate work, you're refining your practice and skill, but it's not as vital to be face-to-face. And so that's an important piece. And it comes from social cognitive theory that Vygotsky, that we learn in community, and that's an important element. That's why I try to teach you guys reverse, because that's what I'm doing. A learning strategy that has based in science. It's kind of cool stuff. All right. Good. Anything else before we move on?
Like developing the students like holistically and not just focus on academics and later on that like students will be like well-rounded individuals.
Good comments. Okay, so let's move on to here. This is the International Reading Association suggests that practitioners, that you guys, practitioners, should ask the following 3 questions when reviewing materials to determine if they meet the evidence-based practice. So you can extrapolate this to not only reading, but to other areas of the curriculum. Question 1, does this instructional strategy provide systemic and explicit instruction in the particular strategies so that you as a practitioner learn them? And do they relate to high rates of achievement for the individuals that I teach? It's an important question. Does it teach me how to teach my students better? If it doesn't, it's crap. Sorry to be so blunt, but you know, it is. I don't know if it's true, you know, the guy that invented the toilet was named John Crapper. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe that's where we got the term. That's why it's called the John. Supposedly, that's myth. Who knows? It's like, yeah, I like language. Drives me nuts. Like cool beans. Have you guys heard that term, cool beans? Do you know where it comes from? It's an interesting thing. It means that's a neat thing that's happening, right? That's what cool beans means. In Boston, in the 1800s or whatever, Boston baked beans. So they would take beans and they would take them out of the oven and sit them on the windowsill. And when they were cool enough to eat, they would holler out, "Cool beans." So it means, okay, now I can go eat my Boston baked beans. So there you go. There's how language is developed. It's like a hot mess, you know, it was kind of a crazy. A hot mess means somebody, I don't know what it means today, but back in my day, that hot mess means somebody that's totally a mess. It's just totally screwed. But somebody was using it to mean something was really a hot person, a cool person. My nieces and nephew, they use their language all the time. Do you know what that really means? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that rabbit trail. Okay, so question 1, does it help my students learn better? Teaches me how to teach my students better. Question 2, does the program or instructional approach provide flexibility in using it with a wide range of students? And it provides a variety of strategies that hit all student levels. Is it broad enough to meet all students' needs? Or can I adapt it that way? Third question is, does the program and instructional approach provide a collection of highly quality literary materials that are diverse in level of difficulty? So again, broad enough to meet the unique needs of my students and wherever they're at. Is it broad enough? If it answers those 3 questions, you think that strategy then is a good strategy. And you can think about this, how this can be used, these 3 questions you can use for any content area, any instructional strategy that you've got. So that's important to think through. So now what do we do? So we're going to look at online tools that identify specific, that you can go through and work through and identify if a strategy is effective or not. The top one is the one that I use a lot. These are all free. So I use the National Center on Intensive Interventions a lot and What Works Clearinghouse. Those are the 2 that I use a lot. Instructional strategies here at the Irish Center is excellent, but I think it's really funny is that they go right back up to and refer to What Works Clearinghouse and the National Center on Intensive Interventions. So let's look at what those websites look like so you can just see them. This is what the National Center on Intensive Interventions website looks like when you go there, and it talks about, is that validated at whatever tier level it is? How do you progress monitor? What happens if the student is not responsive? How are they responsive? How is it diagnostic? And then how do you adapt the intervention? So that's their data-based intervention approach. But if you look up here at these, here, this takes you to the things. This little one right here is tool charts, takes you to the different tools that you could use for academic, behavioral, etc., for progress monitoring and academic intervention or behavioral intervention. And then it comes up to like this. And if you've ever seen a consumer report, you know that a filled-in dot on consumer report, that's the only time you use dots on it. Dot, there you go. A filled-in dot like this means that's good. An empty dot means bad, right? A half-filled dot means sort of okay. So this provides a visual representation like Academy of Math. This research study said for participants and design was good. Fidelity of the implementation was poor. They didn't put it in the way it was written. It sort of measured the target and sort of measured the broader piece. So, and then And you click on those and it'll tell you what those things mean. There's little eyes, tell you what that means. You look down at the bottom, enhanced core reading program, this research study found it to be outstanding. So see, here's a lot of convincing, partially convincing, unconvincing, data unavailable. So I could provide you information real quick. So on the fly, you have a colleague that says, hey, let's work together using this instructional strategy. And if you go to this place and you pull it up and you see like achieve intervention and you see these kind of things, would you want to use it? No. But if you see this one, like early numeracy intervention level 1, would you want to use it? Yeah. That's when you go to this, and it helps you determine that. Then, when you're evaluated at the end of the year for your teaching, you can say, this is sort of how I did to select my interventions for my students. That puts you up at the very top because very few teachers do that. So this is a good way to prove that you're doing these things. So, National Center on Intensive Interventions, outstanding website, outstanding web tool. Then here's the implementation table. All this stuff is there. Tons of things, videos, on and on. So it's a lot of stuff that you can use. ThoughtWorks Clearinghouse, it does a similar thing. It gives you a rating scale here from negative to plus on that. So you would find what works, and you look at all those different interventions. And so we look at this as looking at this, just looking at this one page, and you're doing for early childhood education, what program would you use? Would you use the pre-K math or the building blocks for math, SRA and real math? That one. Again, see, it makes it easy to identify. Helps you identify if it's evidence-based or not. And see, this is the tools that you need to use to identify your instructional strategies. The evidence-based intervention network is another one. I really like this one a lot because it not only gives you the intervention and if there was effective or not, it has a video of the teacher actually implementing the intervention. It's another free one. It was done with a grant from the federal government, and it'll take you on how to select the pieces and everything. It trains you when you go to the module. So it tells you how to select that. Is it a small group? I'll ask questions like, is it a small group or class-wide? Small group is what level of RTI? 2. Well, class-wide is tier 1. So see, that helps you understand which one's the bridge. And then it says individualized, it's tier 3, right? So then, like, for example here, reading interventions, it talks about, is it acquisition, proficiency, this is learning it, this is doing it, you know, those kind of things. And so you look at those pieces and go forward. Same thing with math. So it models the video, a response card, a response cost raffle video. You can click on that and you can watch them actually engage in the instructional strategy. Iris Center is great. I love the Iris Center. As you guys well know, you guys get to go there a lot in this class because you learn a lot of cool stuff there. Itchy pretty. I love kids with Down syndrome. Just like special place. So it'll take you, so you go to the resource locator and it'll talk about evidence-based practices. But the thing that's real funny, like I said, it it takes you right back to the Fireworks Clearinghouse webpage, because that's a affirmative ed webpage. Then we started looking at evidence, high leverage practices in special education. And these, again, are for everybody, not just people in special ed. And the videos that will go along with them are outstanding. So these are CEC and the Cedar program co-sponsored pieces. So that's important to see. So my closing thoughts and a couple words of caution is that evidence-based intervention in your practice is important, and it ensures that students are gaining access and engaged in the curriculum. A couple things. Just because you're using an identified evidence-based intervention doesn't mean that you're using it with fidelity. If you're not using it with fidelity the way it was written, it won't necessarily work. So that's important. Do it with fidelity. Do it the way it was written so you can have some good outcomes. And you must match your evidence-based intervention to your students. If it is a mismatch in the way that they acquire and demonstrate learning, it's not going to work. So you need to know what they need so you can use it appropriately. Those are the two cautions. Make sense? Any questions or thoughts? Normally, I have to go to these websites and do these things, but since we're practicing social distance, you can do it on your own. It's kind of it's a good practice. This is in content module 2. You can download this PowerPoint, and it has the links, hot links in there for you to go to the different websites, and so you can play with those. And also in content page 2 is the study guide, just so you know what's going to be on the test. Again, I don't think it's going to be real difficult. It's a multiple choice, 20 questions, 5 points each. Any questions? Outstanding. Is it fall yet? When did fall happen? 22nd, 23rd, 24th? I think it's fall now. So pumpkin spice latte for everybody, right? I love pumpkin spice. My kids make fun of me. I love it. Okay. I appreciate your time. This is good stuff. Thank you for your good comments, good discussions. I'll see you guys next week. Also, be aware you might get an email. My daughter is pregnant and about ready to give birth. It's our first grandbaby. She lives in Abilene. So you might get an email from me saying, oh, we're going to go online for a couple weeks because we got to be open gone. So just be aware that that might happen. Just want to let you know. Okay? Make it aware. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. You guys have a great day. And I will post this online when I get down to my office. Okay, see you guys. We'll talk to y'all next week. Have a good weekend.